everyone. I'm Vicki Vollweiler. I'm the founder of College Financial Prep, and today we're on preparing for the Preparing for College podcast. So happy to have Michèle Heffron with us today, and we're going to be talking about all the transitions that are taking place as our kids prepare for college and we prepare for our next steps. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, thank you, Vicky. So nice to be here.
So, do me a favor, introduce yourself to everyone.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Heffron. Um, through a lot of different life experiences, I'm certified as a life coach, divorce coach, and relationship coach. And I arrived at this place through the many transitions that I've gone through. Two divorces and one while I had a daughter in college and one when I was preparing to send a son to college. So all of this is so relevant to what I've actually been through, but it's really that life transitions and I find with the women so many times, Vicky, and you probably can relate to this. It's like, what do you do when you're going through a major transition in life and you sort of not who you used to be? You're sort of in a new world and trying to sort things out and what's next for you. So I work with a lot of people in that space.
Um, so Michelle and I met through a divorce group, but when it comes to college, I mean, everybody goes through transitions, right? I mean, wouldn't you think so?
Yeah, oh, 1,000%, because even helping people figure out how they're gonna retire, and I'm not talking about the financial pieces of it, they're just losing one identity to discover what their next one is. Yes.
Definitely, definitely. So yeah, I hear often, about people becoming, empty nesters. They don't know what to do. The baby's leaving home. Just it's a lot to go through, no matter what else is going on in your life.
Well, and sometimes there's, retirement might happen or you become the empty nester, and one partner might want to golf every day, the other one wants to travel, and so there's a lot of, like, where am I in my life? Is that really what I want? And there's just so many, uh, you know, there's so many differences of what life might be like as an empty nester too, coming from different perspectives. And sometimes we don't really think to talk about those things all through the years. And then all of a sudden that time arrives and you're going, okay, I'm not sure this is what I signed up for.
So, with all the craziness with the kids and college applications, and certainly for 12th graders, but even like, families with just high school students may be thinking about the future, as you're going through like all the craziness of preparing the applications and the financial aid and how am I going to pay for it. I think plenty of us parents think about, what should we do next? And I think a lot of people kind of get stuck and they don't know what that's going to look like, and it makes people nervous.
I can't agree with you more. It's a very daunting place to be sometimes because it is also unknown. I mean, unless you've had six of them go ahead, and every single one, as you know, is different, but there is a lot of unknown with it all. And, we humans, we don't really like unknowns. And yet, that's kind of what life is a big unknown.
So, what are some tips that you could give to parents to like help look forward to that next stage?
Yeah. Well, and I wished I had taken this advice. I and eventually did, but I would seek out people who know and get experts like you, Vicky, on the college pieces of it. Instead of trying to do everything on your own, find people who can actually help you through it. It will save so much time, potentially money, because you're not making, you know, uninformed decisions that may lead to bigger mistakes. I find that especially through divorce, because I think we just assume that there's just one way to get divorced, and actually there's not. There's a lot, and so that would be one of them. I would say to sit down and really get clear on what are your goals, and sometimes people get that word goal kind of messed up a little bit. It really just is like, what would you like to see happen in your life, and for your kids or whatever the next phase is. So you have some clarity around what you want your life to look like. And it's not just, well, I guess I have to do this because so and so wants that, this and that. It's really more about getting intentional about what you want and giving yourself the time and space and grace to consider all of that stuff. So you're not just taking these actions all the time without having some sort of inspiration behind them. And I think the other piece of it is to be patient and let things unfold sometimes instead of trying to force an outcome. Because sometimes, when you let go of what you think the outcome should be, the right thing kind of falls into place. And it usually happens when you just kind of surrendered to it all and let things unfold as they're meant to. And part of that is making a decision to do things differently.
It's funny. So I don't know how many people know this. I also am preparing for college. I have a daughter in high school, and and I'm a divorced parent. So, obviously, if you're married, you're going to be talking to your spouse about this. But, I've been giving a lot of consideration to, well, what do I want that next phase to look like? What do I want my business to look like? My work schedule, my private, private life outside of work. What do I want that to look like? Yeah, just giving lots of thought to it. And I think everybody should.
I didn't do that. I remember when it's been 15 years ago that I went through my last divorce, and it was devastating to the point where I literally had to start over in my life. And I was in my very late 40s at that point in time. And it was so scary because I didn't have a job. I had been a stay-at-home mom, and I'd had a daughter in college. And everything was so up in the air, and all I was trying to do, Vicky, was just to survive. And it it's not how we're meant to be. And I never even considered giving myself the time and space to think about what I really wanted in my life. And then a few years into it, I finally mustered up the courage to spend the money to invest in myself, and I did hire a coach. Um, and I started realizing that there is so much more available to me, but I wasn't seeing it because I was just so certain that I just had to trudge through the trenches of what I had created, and all this. And I was such a victim and all this stuff. And then I realized after, and it's been years, I mean, this didn't happen in a weekend. I will tell you that. But once I started to understand that there is so much more to kind of getting some guidance, but also letting yourself look at what you want in your life without feeling constrained by the boxes that you're currently in. A lot more opportunities started to open up for me. And that's what I see so often in my own clients is that when people start to let go of what they think is supposed to happen next, or that they're just at the risk or I guess, what's the word I'm trying to come up with? But they're just at, everyone else's beck and call or the expectations that they think they need to meet for somebody else. When they realize that they can actually step out of that role and
Out of mom for a little while the kids are in college.
yeah, create a different role for yourself, create a different new identity, and it is where people start to kind of really discover who they are. It's discovering who you are and what you're meant for. And it takes a little time, but it also takes a little bit of not trying to control the outcome. I don't know how to explain it differently than that, but that was one of the key takeaways for me. And I still, even though I'm immersed in this stuff every day, I'm still having to remind myself all the time not to get attached to the outcome of things. Just go along with it, see what happens, see what unfolds. And sure enough, when I do that, really great things happen. It's just when I try to like,
So do you put an action plan into place to try to meet your goals?
no, typically not. Isn't that terrible? But I do to a degree, but I take more what I call inspired action. So when I am inspired to take the right action, I take the actions, I do the work. And then once it's done, I I don't get attached to what is supposed to happen from there, knowing that the right thing will happen, the right people will come into my life, or the right opportunity will open up for me. It's like meeting you. I was inspired to join this divorce group that you talked about earlier a while ago, several months ago, and it was kind of a leap. I didn't know what to expect from it. At the beginning, I was expecting all this great things. Well, what ended up happening is over the course of time, I started meeting more and more people all over the country, and from there, I started growing my own business. But it wasn't because I took a plan and just said, okay, then I'm going to do this step, and then all these other things are going to naturally flow out of that. It was just like this unknown. But then I meet people like you. And so, I'm located in the Pacific Northwest up in the Seattle area. And Vicki, you're in
The
New
Northeast, I'm in New York.
Exactly. And, I would never have known someone like you had I not just said, okay, I'm going to go for this thing. I don't know what's going to happen, but I believe it's going to be good. And then what I do though is I reassess always. Is this a good move? Is this doing what I thought it would do? And if it's not, after I've given it, time, then I can course correct from there. So I do a lot of evaluation and course correcting rather than what are all the steps I need to do to get someplace?
Uh, I'm not sure. I think I'm a little bit in the middle of the setting goals and taking actions, and but certainly I resonate with what you're saying. I know sometimes I don't want to think about what the results are going to be, and whatever happens happens, and it's all going to be good, and let's just try it. And one thing I've noticed is that even if plans don't turn out to be what you had hoped it was. I like the way you phrased it, course correct. Like, okay, so you try something different next time, and then that time may work better. Whether it's business or life.
Exactly. And one of those things is like sometimes, I mean, there is a action plan to some degree, but it's really always what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? And we don't have to do seven steps at one time. And so there is that next step, but sometimes it's actually just taking the action that for many people is the change. And whether the outcome is what they expected or not, the celebration, if you will, comes in from them actually taking the step or the action that they wouldn't normally take because of fear, or I wouldn't normally do something like that, or what will people think? But it wasn't about it, so that's a step, and that's an action that people can take that I call inspired. And so we all have different ways of looking at things. And I wasn't always like that because I was always trying to do these steps, but I never followed through all of them because there was just too many at one time. So now I chunk it back into smaller, digestible pieces so people can actually take the actions and celebrate their little wins along the way. So, they're not trying to change the world in an afternoon or by reading a book or by, whatever the little things are. It's those little things over the course of time that gets you where you really want to go, and being able to look back and go, "Wow, I came a long way. That was cool."
Uh, I don't know if you experienced any of this personally with your own kids. And I wonder if our viewers, if anybody's starting to experience this now. But there's a term called soiling the nest, where sometimes our kids will start to act up a little as they're getting ready to go off to college. I'm sure they're stressed and anxious and, worried about what changes are to come when they leave home. So they're going through stuff just the same as we're going through stuff. Any good piece of advice for parents dealing with it all?
Well, I did go through that a little bit. I remember, and my kids are now like 35 and 25, so I'm so fast or beyond it. I mean, it's like there are those days that you thought are going to last forever, and you were thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm going to get through all this. And then now, they have a whole different appreciation for me. And so one of the things I say is that whatever's going on right now, however challenging it is, just know as they change and grow and mature and they start to see how much they leaned on you, and as they get into adulthood, how challenging it is, the appreciation will be there. I do have faith in that because my kids, I mean, my son calls me almost every day. They both live in different states from me. But I would say, when you say that soiling in the nest, I will never forget when my daughter came back from college and I was divorced at this time. And my son and I were living in a small cottage and we had, space for her to come back. But it changed our dynamic so dramatically. And so living here in the Pacific Northwest, I have a very, very strong connection to eagles. And there's eagles everywhere here. I mean, you can look out on any day and there's eagles that fly around, and it's really, really cool. And I read about eagles, and one of the things that they do is they make their own nest so uncomfortable for their young when they get to a certain age that the young don't want to live there anymore. So I really took this to heart, and I went, okay, I mean, my daughter needed to move out. She had been home for a couple years. The dynamic in the house was challenging, and it was just time for her to go and start her own little life and figure out her own money and all that stuff. Um, and I needed to move because my son was getting ready at that time to go to high school, and I wanted to move to be closer to his high school, so I moved into a smaller place, and there was no space for her, and she was so angry with me at the beginning, and now she will always tell me that was the best thing you ever did is to make me go out on my own because I would have just not left. And I was like, I just knew that I had to make it so uncomfortable for her. But now we all laugh about it now, but boy, it sure wasn't funny at the time, Vicki.
I can imagine. Ah. So would you consider this all normal parts of growing up?
I think so. I mean, I think I was, even being a single mom, and I was very stressed a lot of the time just because I wasn't sure how everything was always going to pan out. But um, you know, yeah, there was heated moments here and there, but I do feel like all of it was, for me at least, and my kids. I don't think that they're perfect. I think that if I could have done some things differently, certainly I would have. But now, I see that we all went through stuff and we all survived. And I won't say that every household has, all the perfect pieces of, because they don't. But you know what? Sometimes it's what I see builds us as strong humans and our character sometimes. And having gone through what I went through now, because it was really, really tough and having to reinvent my life, I don't look back at it and see myself as a victim as I did then. I really see it as what was happening for me so I could do what I'm doing today. Because having this knowledge and that experience that I had really has helped me shape who I am and what I can do for others. And I know that that's going to be the same for my kids because we don't know what they're going to do with their lives yet. But all of this that they go through is theirs to go through and bring along with them. And they get to choose how they want to be in the world with all of that. So you can look at it as a gift or you can look at it as a curse. Because what is is. You can't change what happened.
That's fabulous. I love that. It's all about your perception and what you do with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that sounds so like, oh yeah, that's easy to say, but actually, and I used to be the same way. I used to go, oh yeah, well that's great for you. But then I really actually started to embrace that in my own life, and I could see now why. And I really, I refer to it a lot as that golden thread of life that helps weave in the fabric of who we are and what we're becoming through it all. It's interesting. This morning, I got the news that a dear friend passed away, and he had been quite ill, and his family sent out this lovely kind of story of his life. And you know, what he started at and what he grew to be in terms of this human that did so much for the world, you would never have thought that when he started out, he wasn't college educated and he ended up running huge companies and doing amazing things in the world. And it was just, he kept using each experience to build on and just created this beautiful life. And I look at that and think, okay, none of us know when we're sitting there at 10 years old or 15 years old or 18 or 48 or whatever, really where it's all going. And to give ourselves that grace and knowing that things are unfolding as they're meant to, but you also get to create it. And I think that is what the beauty is being able to know that you get to create from where you are and become as you're going along. So it's not a destination. It's like it's that whole, I know they say it's a journey, but it's that whole pathway, and I do look at that as kind of that golden thread of life. I think that that is where the beauty lies.
Yeah, that's I love that. Very nice.
So, and as you're looking at your college your students going off to college, it's the same thing. They get to, write their own story.
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
So do me a favor. We're gonna wrap up in a bit. Um, tell what's the one, general piece of a coaching advice that you give to most people? What is it that most people need that you could
Oh
share
my
with
goodness. Um, I think with most people, because the change comes from within, and looking outside and expecting other people to change for you is missing the point. So I hear a lot of people who are so not, I mean, they don't like this person, they don't like that, what's going on in their life, oh, and it's like, well, I love, in the words of Byron Katie, is that, you can only clean up your side of the street. The other side of the street is theirs to clean up if they choose to. Otherwise, theirs get to be messy. You get to clean up yours, and it's how you want to operate in your own life. And you always have choices. You might not like the choices that you have, but you do get a choice. And so, to me, one of the biggest things is to learn and develop a curiosity about what's possible, but also being able to develop a place of quietness, which is very hard for a lot of people, and being able to sit still and to listen to their hearts, because my whole thing is that your head is what thinks, but your heart always knows. And your head drowns out what the heart wants a lot of the time. And so if you only could be quiet, you could listen to what's in your heart and then help your head align with what's up there so you can move forward in your life.
very, very nice. Do me a favor, Michelle, tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So my company is getting to the heart of who you are and what you're meant for. And my website is michelleheffron.com. And my name is Michelle with one L. So it's Michele Heffron.com. And I'm on all the socials. You can find me under Michelle Heffron. LinkedIn is probably my biggest one. And I have a podcast called Getting to the Heart. Our own Vicki was on my podcast last week. It will be airing in a couple weeks. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll put all the information in the show notes so everyone will have access to it.
excellent. Thank you so much. This is so fun.
I'm glad you were here and want to thank everyone for watching today's episode of Preparing for College.